Hey there, I'm back. Whew, I've had a long work day. I'm thankful, but I'm glad to be able to finally sit down and pick up my book and get to join you guys again. I was kind of wondering from the last section when we were talking about fathers and them not being available. I was wondering how many of you out there were thinking, oh, but my dad was in the home and he was there. And I kind of wanted to clarify that they're talking about fathers that are available emotionally. So fathers are supposed to teach identity and safety and protection. And they are supposed to teach leadership. So even if your dad was in the home, but if he wasn't emotionally connected, there's a really good chance that you were still living with an absentee father experience, and that definitely takes a toll on you emotionally, spiritually, and biologically. So anyway, well, again, I hope you guys had a great day. I'm kind of finishing my day, so I don't know, maybe this is the morning for some of y'all. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go into section 2 of chapter 4, and this is titled Human Hardware and Software Made for Relationships. Our core relational beliefs are the product of a complex web of experiences and memories. Over time, children internalize experiences with their primary caregiver in such a way that they form a prototype or internal working model that guides later relationships outside the context of the family. Now, John Bowlby, the founder of attachment theory and primary pioneer of the research on attachment relationships, identifies two key features of these working models of attachment, or our core relational beliefs. Okay, one, whether or not the self is perceived to be worthy of the primary caregiver's or mom and dad's caring response. And two, whether or not the primary caregiver is perceived to be reliable and responsive to the child's needs. Remember, it was asking, am I worthy of love, and are others capable of giving me love? So it's connecting it to that. The intense feelings of stress upon separation and the subsequent feelings after the caregiver returns shape that information we attend to and remember, and the attributions and interpretations we make about relational experiences, both with others and most importantly with God. These core relational beliefs begin in infancy with very specific representations of our relationships, primarily with mom, dad, or both, and whether they are there for us in times of stress, need, or want. As we enter our teen years and young adulthood, these beliefs move away specifically from our primary caregivers and become generalized to other individuals, particularly our romantic partners and even to God. If our primary caregiver is reliable and available during times of stress and duress, we develop positive beliefs about our self-worth. I am worthy of love, and I am capable of gaining love and support in times of emotional stress. The subsequent response from our primary caregiver then shapes the beliefs and expectations about the reliability and willingness of other people, which is other people are able and willing to help me when I am in need, and they are reliable and trustworthy. When we use the word memory to describe how our core relational beliefs develop, we refer to any past experience that influences the way we think, feel, behave, and relate. Though you may be sitting there thinking about your past experiences with your parents and trying to remember how they treated you, understand that the development of your core relational beliefs does not necessarily require that the experience be consciously remembered. Understanding the two broad divisions in your memory system may help clarify the difference between implicit and explicit memory. So implicit memories, they are memories that we may not be able to consciously recall. They begin at birth and continue to develop through our lifetime. These memories are encoded in the brain based on repeated sequences of behavior and include sets of behaviors, feelings, sensations, and perceptions, including our most important relational experiences. Now, based on these stored sequences of experiences, more general rules are then formed about how to do things, such as how to put on clothing or how to ride a bicycle. Implicit memories also store patterns of relationship experiences. Developmental psychologist Erik Erikson labeled the first stage of human development trust and mistrust. This central developmental task is the foundation for all human emotional and relational growth, and it typically occurs in a child by the age of 1. Trust is developed as a child associates crying with being comforted, or develops mistrust when its needs expressed in crying are met with a parent's anger, avoidance, or rejection. Now, based on interactions with those who are responsible to care for them, which is most often the parents, or it could be a babysitter. Remember, if your parents are working a lot and you're in the care of a babysitter, or an aunt, uncle, or grandparent, or whatever, sometimes, especially babysitters, are not as invested in your development as your primary caregivers. And so again, it's gonna be those frequent interactions that you're dealing with that's going to set this up. So based on interactions with those who are responsible to care for them, children form perceptions about their identities, others, intimacy, and emotions as early as the first year of life. And this can actually go in up into the 3rd year of life. So for example, a child may conclude, I can express my emotions effectively, and my parents will respond in a way that helps me feel better. Interestingly, even at that early age, the parent's response to the child is imprinted onto mirror neurons. And later in life, the child is likely to automatically, almost instinctively, and without even awareness, respond to his or her own emotions and behaviors in a manner that reflects the way the parents responded. So you're being primed, and so thus you're going to treat yourself that way. Now, unlike explicit memories, implicit ones are not accompanied by an internal sensation of the event or of being remembered. In this way, past experiences powerfully influence the way we think, feel, behave, relate, and perceive events today, but without any of our awareness of how the past is actually influencing the present. Not surprisingly, the perceptions a child develops about life at this early age strongly shapes his or her view of God and every other relationship for the rest of his or her life. Here are 2 examples of implicit memories. So Tim says, as a boy, I had a snake fall out of a tree and land on my shoulders. So today when I see a snake, I can feel that snake wrapped around my neck and shoulders. Snakes and I don't get along too well. This is implicit memory. Now, Josh remembered being at school a few years ago and seeing one of his best friends sitting at his cubicle working. Being a relatively physical guy, he says that he walked up from behind him and nonchalantly reached his arm out to gently hit him across the shoulder as a way to get his attention and say hello. And Josh says, as I did, he rapidly swung around in his chair with fists ready to fight. As I jumped back, I said, bro, what in the world are you doing? Having been physically beaten by his father early in life, his initial reaction to somebody's coming at him from behind was to fight. This is implicit memory. And guys, implicit memory is happening, again, even past the age of 1. Some families, some parents got divorced when the child was 3 or 4 or 5. I mean, that's all still encoding. So again, just as you're thinking about this, don't go just back to year 1. We also know that, again, what the mother is going through, what she's experiencing as she's pregnant with the child, we know that children are experiencing in utero experiences. If mom has a lot of cortisol and adrenaline running through her body, that baby's being bathed in that. And so we know that the nervous system is being developed, and we know that this is absolutely going to affect a child, their temperament, and again, what their core belief systems are and how they're going to relate with others and how they're going to relate with themselves. Now, in contrast, explicit memories are those that we typically think of when we think of memory. It's also the type of memory you are most likely using to recall facts about your relationship with your primary caregiver as you listen to this book. There are many different types of explicit memory, including both factual and autobiographical. So factual memory concerns consciously recalled pieces of information like what a bicycle is or what a flower is. Autobiographical or narrative memory has to do with memories of ourselves in time. So, for example, memories of our lives that revolve around specific moments in our history, like the joy of getting our first bicycle, our first kiss, or who won the game we watched last Saturday. The capacity to form autobiographical memories does not come online until after about the age 2. Both factual and autobiographical memories are stored and recalled as verbal information, and they require that we be conscious of them in order for us to properly talk about and understand them. In many ways, all of our experiences can be encoded as implicit memories, and a special part of the brain known as the hippocampus takes implicit memories and assembles them like a jigsaw puzzle and transforms them into explicit verbal memories that can either become factual, like you recall what a bicycle is, and or autobiographical, such as you remember your dad teaching you how to ride a bicycle. Autobiographical memory is sometimes referred to as narrative memory. This is a very important part of our lives and represents some of the most complex functions in the brain, as the prefrontal cortex takes our implicit, emotionally charged memories and integrates them with our explicit autobiographical memory to form stories about our lives and relationships. The very essence of secure adult attachment with others, which is what we want, and with God, is the ability to understand our lives. We need to understand our lives and process that gets us that secure attachment. It's a coherent story that includes the good, the bad, and the ugly events and integrates them into an understanding of why we are the way we are. In an important way, the Bible is the story of God's dealings with humankind, and each of our individual testimonies is our way of understanding how God has worked in our lives and continues to do so even today. Counseling may be seen as our effort to help people develop more coherent narratives as they come to an understanding of their lives. The secure base system, how core relationship beliefs develop. We hope you're beginning to understand how our memories of and experiences with our primary caregivers early in life are not just behaviorally, but also biologically encoded in our brain. The secure base system is a powerful way to conceptualize and understand the different components of attachment relationships. In our most important relationships in the first years of life, we form implicit, emotionally charged core beliefs about ourselves. We learn which emotions are acceptable and which are off limits for our parents. And the lessons we learn in those years form our most fundamental assumptions about the reality of feelings, the expression of them, and the validity of emotional needs. It forms permission. The assumptions we develop form a powerful interpretive grid that can determine how we respond to our own emotions and others' feelings for the rest of our lives. Before explaining how it works, Tim, want to illustrate it with a personal example. So he says, I remember an incident when my son Zach was little. We were at a softball practice for my daughter Megan, and while I was on the field coaching, Zach was playing with his mom off to the side. This particular softball field had a train trestle nearby. When he was a boy growing up, one of Zach's favorite toys was Thomas the Tank Engine. My wife Julie would occasionally tease him about the possibility of the trains coming by while he was playing, and he couldn't wait for it to come over that big bridge, until the day he got his wish. In a matter of seconds, a cargo train came barreling down the tracks right toward him. If you've ever been around a train, you know its overwhelming presence. So out of nowhere, a look of terror came over Zach's face. And whom did he turn to? His mother. And as he went running into her arms, overwhelmed with fear, his actions were basically screaming to her, is that a good choo-choo or is that a bad choo-choo? When we hit moments of fear or disappointment or crisis in our life, we begin seeking safety. Zach, overwhelmed by the potential of a bad choo-choo, made a beeline for Julie, his mother. And as she picked him up and their eyes met, without saying anything, he was asking, Are we going to be okay? Or do we need to run? What's interesting about that moment was that Julie was also responding to his questions without verbally saying anything. She was attuning to him. Her calming response in the midst of his terror provided the security Zach needed. Once he knew he was safe, he was able to emotionally regulate himself. As soon as Zach felt secure again, even though the train was still going by, he was able to get down and start playing and explore the world around him all over again. And I kind of want to say that if your parents weren't able to attune to you, try to think back what their lives were like. You may go and ask your parents. I've done that with mine. Try to find out what their autobiographies are and what was it like when they were growing up. And you'll probably find that they either did have parents that attuned to them or they didn't, because again, we sort of reproduce what we're taught. So the secure base system has four core components that unfold in a feedback loop. To illustrate this fourfold process, we'll imagine a mother and her toddler walking into a showroom filled with toys. The mother sits in a chair and the child initially sits in her lap as he looks around the room. The first component is the secure base experience, which refers to the child's sense of security and is tied directly to his belief that his mother is available, attentive, and accessible. Picture Zach running into Julie's arms as a train came barreling by. Her answer to his screaming nonverbal question of, "Am I safe?" made all the difference in his ability to be able to feel secure enough to get back down, play again, get curious, and explore. The second component revolves around the child's exploration. The little boy crawls off his mother's lap and explores his surroundings, frequently looking back at his mom to share the experience and to check to make sure mom is available if he gets frightened. Exploration is an essential element in building the child's self-confidence. Self-confidence, then, is inherently relational and begins with confidence in the secure relationship with loving parents. Take note that in this model, self-confidence is inherently relational and begins with confidence in the other. Third, if something threatens the child's sense of security, such as a stranger entering the room, the parent leaving, or a train coming by, the child's desire to explore quickly evaporates and attachment behavior is activated. Now, this behavior is the desire to be reconnected with the parent to feel safe again. It is propelled by intense emotion, usually a mixture of anxiety and anger. There are at least two kinds of attachment behavior: proximity seeking and signaling. Proximity seeking is any behavior that helps the child obtain physical closeness to the parent. It can take many forms, including crawling, running, or reaching for the parent. Signaling is how the child alerts the parent that there is a problem, including whining, crying, screaming, or pleading. The mom's interpretation of these messages of proximity seeking and signaling plays a very important role in how sensitively and effectively she responds to the child's distress. If she doesn't respond with appropriate compassion, the child concludes his mother isn't safe, doesn't care, and possibly that he isn't worthy of her love. So, for example, Tim, remember having Zach with me one evening at a local Target store. We would always play a friendly game of hide and seek, and he would hide and I would find him, until one day I decided to hide and he couldn't find me. And as I watched him peering out through clothes racks, I noticed how nervous he began to get. And he gently said, "Dad," and then he raised it up an octave and said, "Dad, Dad." Then he took the sound of his voice straight vertical and blew out the store, so much that the security guard who was nearby heard him and came running. You could only imagine the scene when I jumped out and scared him. And my wife, Julie, was not too happy with me. Finally, the fourth component is when the caregiver and child reconnect and produce a safe haven of calm, peace, safety, and love. The threats have been identified and overcome, the connection has been reestablished, and love is reinforced. The loop goes full circle in healthy family environments. It begins with security and ends with security. The experiences of these early years, including how healthy or not this attachment loop of interactive behaviors and feelings is, become part of the wiring in a child's brain. Research shows that a child's core beliefs about relationships are encoded and organized into internal working models that are stored in the limbic system. It's also known as the emotional brain, as implicit memories. These memories are emotionally charged, pre-verbal structures that strongly influence a child's behavior long before he or she develops explicit, verbal, autobiographical memories of the experiences that shaped him or her. This wiring also determines, along with personality and other factors, the person's basic style of relating to others. When children or adults perceive that the answer to the two crucial questions, am I worthy of love? And are others capable and accessible of loving me when I need them, is yes, they feel safe and secure, and they are willing to try new things because they are convinced that failure doesn't bring condemnation or abandonment. But when the answer to either question is no, people invest every ounce of energy to fend off attacks, even when they don't really exist, to win desperately needing approval and avoid any risk of failure or rejection. Develop a timeline of your life. I'm going a little longer this time. I'm almost to the end though. At this point in the journey, we recommend that you take time to draft a detailed timeline of your life that includes all of the major events and relationships that you have experienced. At first, you will log explicit memories. We hope that as we move on, however, throughout the book and refer back to the timeline, that some of the implicit feelings, thoughts, and behaviors you have had will begin to be realized. For each event or relationship, they should include parents, primary caregivers, siblings, romantic interests, and close friends. Describe the moment, your feelings at the time, and your behavior during and after the event. Some events were joyous and they are easy to remember, but some events haunt us, and we have repressed the trauma for years. These occasions may not come to mind very readily. Developing an accurate and meaningful timeline is a spiritual experience. Schedule an extended time alone, away from responsibilities and distractions. If you are a parent, find someone to stay with the children for several hours and go to a park or a library where you can think and pray alone. Ask God to bring past events to mind. As you sit quietly, a few events will probably leap to your mind. Jot those down and then wait for more. Review the significant holidays in your mind, especially Christmas and birthdays when the family was all together. And after a while, perhaps another memory or two will come and then nothing. But wait. Quite often, the Holy Spirit will resurface memories buried for years. You'll think, wow, I haven't thought of that for such a long time. Jot it down and wait again. After a while, you may think of one or two more events that you haven't remembered for many years. Some of the memories may seem obscure and irrelevant, but write them down anyway. Their significance may become clear after you've had time to reflect on them and connect some dots. Days or weeks later, the Lord may bring even more memories back to you, but for now, you have enough to work with. For each event, describe the wound you experienced, your immediate emotional response, and then your learned response of self-protection, control, distrust, avoidance, and warped responsibility. This is hard work. It may take conversations with a trusted friend or counselor to fit the pieces of the puzzle together, but the results will usually be dramatic. Now, the patterns of your life come into sharp focus. You see the wounds, the environment of distrust, your self-protective and controlling behaviors, and your reasons for acting the way you have acted. Seeing provides us with the opportunity to make new, different choices. Decisions that can change our relationships both with others and with God for a lifetime. Your core relationship beliefs about God. Understanding more clearly how your core relational beliefs affect and have the potential to infect your relationships now, both with others and with God, may require more out of you than you bargained for when you picked up or started listening to this book. What you're about to read may very well change the way you have understood and framed your universe, especially how you have viewed God up to this point. In fact, it may change your life, penetrating and shattering any cynicism, doubt, and skepticism that you have had through the years. Your specific God attachment and the core beliefs and presuppositions you have about God directly affect the way you relate to Him every day. As you discover your personal style of relating to others and to God, our hope is that you're able to be truly honest about and discover your own personal views of God, because they may not be as accurate as you once thought. In fact, in a recent Gallup poll, researchers discovered that 31% of Americans view God as judgmental, 25% view God as benevolent, 23% view God as distant, and 16% view God as critical. On the other hand, those found to have a secure attachment relationship with God are more likely to describe Him as loving, protective, not distant, not inaccessible, and who gives me comfort, a warm-hearted refuge, and who is always waiting for me. Lee Kirkpatrick, who was the first researcher to conceptualize and study religion as an attachment process, has since found that not only does God serve the function of an adult attachment relationship, but also that earlier attachment relationships are most likely to shape the way we view God in adulthood and how we ultimately relate to Him on a daily basis. Our core relational beliefs about ourselves and about others affect and often infect how intimate we are with others and even with God. What's interesting is that these core relational beliefs manifest themselves in what we call an attachment relationship style. And you have an attachment style, the discovery of which is the focus of the next chapter. All right, well, you have your homework. I went a little over, sorry about that, but I wanted to finish that chapter and get it all in there. So I encourage you to do your homework and don't put it off, please. I know a lot of you out there want breakthrough, and I want breakthrough for you as well. I've had to do a lot of this myself, and it's really good. If you just take the time, invest in yourself. You are so worth it. You are so lovable. And I just want you to know that people really do care about you. People really do love you. And if you didn't learn that growing up, you're mistaken. And when you find out the reality of how enriching your life will be, when you finally let your walls down and you get in touch with what's really going on inside of you, and you are able to have healthiness and victory in your relationships, oh my gosh, it's a game changer. And you're never, ever going to want to go back to the way things were. You're going to have freedom and enrichment and joy and peace and so much that you just don't even know. So I encourage you, and I'm excited for people's breakthrough, and I'll meet you back here for chapter 5. Okay?